Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Westerns for Life podcast. We're joined today by special guest, formerly known as the Good, the Bad, and the OK. Big Western fan. This movie I've picked specifically as I want to really hear what he has to think about it. So I know it's kind of one he finds a little bit odd at times, like I do. But it is the 1973 spaghetti western. My Name is Nobody, directed by Tonino Valeri.
The plot.
And it is basically about a gunfighter heading for New Orleans to board a ship and retire peacefully to Europe. But he is prevented from hanging up his pistols by the persistent admiration of a young gunman called Nobody. Initially hired to kill the veteran fighter, Nobody becomes his friend and insists that the great man's career should end with a glorious climax to paint his name in history as kind of the undisputed gunfighter of the Old West.
The characters.
So we're going to head into the characters, and Nobody is played by a spaghetti western regular in Terence Hill. That I've got to say, I actually really do enjoy in this film. I've seen several of his films. He's definitely got the look. Um, this is kind of a bit of it's billed as a comedy western. I don't always find it that way, but you can see Terence Hill's definitely got the chops for a bit of comedy, even though the slapstick's not my kind of thing. So Leslie, Terence Hill, what are your thoughts on him as a actor and him playing Nobody in this movie?
Okay, that's a as an actor. I haven't seen a lot of Terence Hill films, but I think what he did in this movie was he's actually pretty good, especially during the sincere parts, because he definitely comes off rather sincere and believable. It's the more I don't want to. It's not slapsticky, but the more nor is it comedic. 'Cause it's more
Goofy.
goofy. Yeah,
Hmm.
the goofy elements don't really win me over, but when he's actually being serious, like he's quite good. So yeah, I think he does a very good job in this movie.
For me, Terence Hill is definitely a great actor within the spaghetti western genre. He's an Italian-bred actor. Obviously, Terence Hill is a stage name for him. He's actually Mario something, Mario Girardi, if I got that right. So he's full-blood Italian. Like Franco Neri is one of the big Italian stars, like not one of the U.S. stars like Clint Eastwood and stuff that made their name in Europe and spaghetti western. I like his films when they're definitely more serious, Django Prepare a Coffin, which is a fantastic quasi sequel to the original Corbucci Django. Even the early films he did with Bud Spencer, which had not turned comedic yet, I guess there's a little bit of comedy in Boot Hill, but God Forgives, I Don't. That's definitely a straight up Western, no comedy there. I like him best when he's not being a goofball. Like he's a little bit in this film, but then there's serious moments as well. That's why I do like this one, because it's a mix of both. Again, the slapstick humor, I think we discussed this before, is also not one of the factors that works for me, but we'll get to that when we discuss the sort of tonal elements of the film with the comedy and stuff. But overall, I think Terence Hill did a good job in this one. And yeah, he definitely has a good look as an on-screen cowboy. So I do like him. Carlos?
Yeah, this was the first Terence Hill movie I watched. My Name is Nobody. He looks the part, cocky, fast on the trigger. This role was kind of made for him on the backbone of the Trinity movies. Just like Jeff says, it's a balance. There is a little bit of more of a serious Trinity character in this. At the same time, those two movies that Jeff said, Django Prepare a Coffin and God Forgives, I Don't, are straight up spaghetti westerns. But this one is a bit of a slash comedy. It's probably my favourite Terence Hill performance, and he actually even said that this is his favourite role, with him working with Henry Fonda and with Tonino Valeri and a bit of Sergio Leone, which is probably going to be a subject that we're going to get into. So, yeah, I thought he done a great job in this. Yeah, probably my favourite spaghetti western movie that he's played in, for sure, Terence Hill.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
What elevates his role in this movie compared to his others? Why do you feel that he does a better job here?
I think he's raised his game up a little bit more because obviously he's with Henry Fonda. Obviously with the Trinity movies with Bud Spencer, that's kind of like his that's his combo, Bambino in the Trinity movies. That's kind of like his safe partner. So I mean, who would never turn down the chance to be with the great Henry Fonda? And quite a few features. He does state that he loved working with Sergio Leone. Sergio Leone actually picked him, based on his idea for this movie. He wanted the Trinity character in a kind of more serious movie, but more lighthearted.
Yeah, it was pretty much a FU to the Trinity films on Sergio's part. Is pretty much how that. Yeah, true.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question because I got to agree with that. Terence Hill on this is another level to a handful of films I've seen him in before. I did really enjoy. I mean, when you sent me this film, Carlos, it surprised me because it's not normally my kind of thing. This humour in westerns. When we move on to the legendary Henry Fonda, who I've got to say I'm actually warming to a lot. I know he's been in some great films. But he hasn't always been a guy I thought, I'm going to watch it because Henry Fonda's in it. But when you watch him in Once Upon a Time in a West, and then you see him in this film, for me, this possibly his second favourite ever performance he's been in. And I actually had to look this up. I'm not ashamed to admit it, because I actually thought when I originally watched it, especially the earlier scenes, one scene in particular, which is my favourite, I thought he was channeling John Wayne, but it's not the case. It's just apparently he's just a very good friend of John Wayne, and he said he didn't channel him, but there were certain elements I thought he was. But he's absolutely brilliant in this film as Jack Beauregard, the aging legendary gunfighter. Leslie, so Henry Fonda and his character, what are your thoughts?
Same as yourself. I wasn't a big Henry Fonda fan until I watched Once Upon a Time in the West, and he really won me over with that role. And then there's 12 Angry Men, which he's great in as well. But yeah, in this movie, he's good. Like, he plays the role of a retiring gunman. I believe he's a retiring gunman quite well. And again, believable, sincere, those words apply here too. And he really bounces off from Terence Hill quite naturally. So it's a good performance between the two of them, and there is chemistry there, and it works.
Yeah, I'll second that, especially on the chemistry part. I do really love the interplay between both of them in this film, Terence Hill and Henry Fonda. When it comes to Henry Fonda, I know we discussed some previews on the episode of the Oxbow incident, where I wasn't too big on him in that film. I thought he did a fine job, with that one. But his best film for me is still Once Upon a Time in the West, hands down. I mean, obviously it's my second favorite movie of all time. So, but that's definitely his best performance for me as well. But this one comes damn close, and he's actually I find it very similar to Once Upon a Time was in a lot of aspects in his performance, and also some music cues we're going to get to when we discuss the soundtrack. I mean, a film that harkens back to one of my all-time favorites. Yes, please. I'm not going to complain. So, yeah, I love Henry Fonda. This film. This is one of his best for me. Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, I probably like Henry Fonda more than you guys. I liked him in his American Westerns, My Darling Clementine. And as he got older, I actually liked his movies even more so. I think it's great that we got another spaghetti Western out of him, because there's certainly quite a few American actors that only did the one spaghetti Western. And to get Henry Fonda back, 4 or 5 years after the success of Once Upon a Time in the West, mainly with Sergio Leone when they asked for Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda did it without even thinking, and he actually quoted that working with Sergio Leone was his favourite director he's ever worked with. This character, Jack Beauregard, I like because it's kind of like the aging gunfighter, rather kind of getting going the way that old gunfighters normally go. It's kind of like a nice farewell without giving too many spoilers away. So it's kind of a fitting way to end his career in westerns. It was his last western, even though I think he'd done a western as 4 or 5 years later as a cameo role in a Peter Fonda movie. Name skips me mind, but this is like his last western, and it's nicely played out. His character at the end of the movie. So fine job again, as always, with Henry Fonda.
I didn't realize that, but it is indeed a great final one for him. It's like Unforgiven for Clint. It's like a great final western. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, nicely put. Move on to an actor, Jean Martin, who plays a character, Sullivan, who I was watching it, I thought, I know the face, but I couldn't place him. And then I thought, Day of the Jackal must be the only film, from my recollection, I've seen him in. I will say someone I don't know too much about, but a very fitting role in this film, which I enjoyed. I've got nothing really more to add on Jean Martin, but are you that familiar with his work, Leslie, and what do you think of this character?
I had to quickly take a look. I don't really have much of an opinion. Like, he was fine. He didn't really stand out to me. Yeah, that's really. I'm not very familiar with this work.
Yeah, and sadly, it's the same for me. I'm actually looking him up as we speak as well. I see he was in the Battle of the Algiers, which is an Italian war film. I have seen that one because it has a music score by the same composer that did this film, Ennio Morricone. But other than that, I haven't seen the original Day of the Jackal. So yeah, I have nothing else to compare it to. But in this film, again, he was serviceable, I guess, for the plot, for the story, for the character he was gonna play. Oh, I see. He's also in A Genius, Two Partners, and a Dupe, which is also another Terence Hill comedy with Sergio Leone involvement later on. Yeah, he's okay in this one. Nothing really stood out too much about him. Just the same as Leslie for me. But maybe Carlos can elaborate a bit more.
I haven't really seen much with him. I mean, I have seen The Day of the Jackal with Edward Fox, but that was many years ago. So I can't remember his role in that, but his face is familiar. And also, that other Terence Hill spaghetti western he did. A Genius, Two Partners, and a Dupe, which is somewhat of a big letdown. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure he might have popped up in another spaghetti western or two. But the character of Sullivan, he wasn't really in it that much to really kind of really put some sort of a hold as a character or somewhat villain in the movie. For me, it was kind of they didn't really display him enough. If I'm honest, it's probably the weakness, his character in the movie for me. It was underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Sullivan came off as like a poor man's Morton from Once Upon a Time in the West to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Now, even though this next character's not in it too much, he's definitely worth mentioning. I always think he lends something quite well to whenever he pops up in a film. But it's Jeffrey Lewis, who I class as a bit of a legend for sure. Just someone you always see him. He's just very likable, but in this one, obviously not so much. So, Leslie, are you familiar with Jeffrey Lewis's work?
Yeah, he's definitely somebody who I associate strongly with Clint Eastwood because of was it Any Which Way But Loose? Those movies.
Yeah, High Plains Drifter. Yeah,
exactly. And then it's watching him in the Culpeper Cattle Company he's great in that. So to see him in this movie, it's always a pleasure to see him on screen because he always does a great job. And regardless if he's playing a good guy or a bad guy, uh, he's just great on screen. Sorry, what was it? Thunderbolt
Yeah.
Lightfoot came to mind, and
He's
he's
in as
Yeah.
well.
yeah, brilliant. Yeah, he's great, and even though he's only in this for what was it about 5-10 minutes, he's still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely catches your eye, especially if you're familiar with him already. Yeah, we talked about him. I think he was in Maverick. We discussed him on the Maverick episode. The first thing I saw him in was a couple episodes of the A-Team that he guest starred on. So I grew up on that show as a kid. Yeah, obviously all the Clint Eastwood. He did a good 5 or 6 films with Eastwood, I think. You know, both Which Way films, High Plains Drifter, Vulnerable Lightfoot. I think he's even in Pink Cadillac. So he did Bronco Belly. He did a good few films with Eastwood. And then, you know, more than that, Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He was in that. He was big in that as Uncle Frankie. Tango and Cash, I always remember him from. So yeah, he's a great actor, a great face. His face always stands out when you see it on screen. So yeah, it was good to see him once again in this film. And I think he did another European Western around this time, Silver Saddle with Giuliano Gemma.
Yeah.
Which I sadly haven't seen because I got a defective Blu-ray of it, so I got to get a new copy of it. But I've heard he has a memorable role in that one as well. So, you know, Jeffrey Lewis, good to see him. What do you think, Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, first thing comes to mind is connection with the Clint Eastwood movies. I always enjoyed him as the main leader of the gang in High Plains Drifter. From the Bottom Lightfoot, even Salem's Lot, which I thought he was pretty creepy in that one.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they use some American actors with European actors with some spaghetti western regulars. Obviously, they did film quite a bit of this in New Mexico, so you had some American actors thrown in as well. So it kind of adds a little bit more credibility, you know, as a worldwide sort of spaghetti western. I mean, he's the leader of the Wild Bunch here. I mean, for a fair part of the movie, you only see his pants and the gun that he's carrying. Which is kind of like it's kind of like paying homage to the Josh Randall character that Steve McQueen did in the Wanted Dead or Alive TV series. The gun that he wore alongside his pants. So yeah, he carried a bit of weight as a villain. But yeah, it's always good to see Jeffrey Lewis in a movie away from Clint Eastwood.
Mm-hmm. And if one of you guys want to mention as well some of the spaghetti western regulars, because I tend to butcher their names other than Mario Brega, which I can pronounce with ease.
Yeah,
Jeff,
there's obviously
Carlos?
a few in this one. Brega, Benito Stefanelli, the famous stuntman, he did a lot of stunts for these spaghetti westerns and stuff, and he always popped up in big roles. Who else have we got, Carlos?
So yeah, they're two of the main spaghetti western regulars, and then we also had R.J. Armstrong, which I think everyone will remember him from Predator or the Arnie movie with Jeff Bridges, Stay Hungry, which he played a right weirdo in that one. So yeah, another American actor involved.
I also want to point out that he's also in the Ballad of Cable Hogue, which is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Yeah, I mean, he's always a face that you recognise. I mean, I think most of the modern day audience will kind of remember him from Predator. He's more serious than that one, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's there in the famous scene, you know, Dylan, you son of a bitch, and then you got that handshake. He's in that scene. Yeah.
Behind the camera.
So now the director of this film, Tonino Valeri, who we've already actually reviewed Day of Anger on this podcast series that he directed, another fine western. So you can check that out if you choose to. And I've got to say, this, My Name is Nobody, and Day of Anger are the only two movies I've seen from director Tonino Valeri. He does have a very strong link with Sergio Leone, which I'm sure we get to during this podcast, but Leslie, Tonino Valeri as a director and the job he done on this.
I'm not
Your
very
thoughts?
familiar with his other. Sorry for interrupting. I'm not very familiar with his other films, but I felt that the directing in this was it was spot on, and no surprise. I mean, from what I've read, he was either the assistant director or the second unit director for Sergio Leone for the films Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More. So there's definitely going to be some impact or influence behind his style, which we do see here. And I really felt that the directing in this movie was quite strong. And yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more later as we get to the favorite scenes. But yeah, I thought it was very, very good. Very well done. Like very Sergio Leone-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely feels epic, like Sergio would shoot it. Which I mean, there's obviously a rumor that Sergio also directed a few scenes here and there, but we're gonna get to that. But no, Tonino Valerie, absolutely. Yeah, he worked on Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More as an assistant director, second unit director. So yeah, I think he definitely was taught the profession by Sergio. So yeah, Sergio definitely took him under his wing. To his credit, he's done some excellent spaghetti westerns. Once he sort of broke off with Sergio, I guess. Well, this one obviously it's a collaborative effort, but Day of Anger is a fantastic spaghetti western. Also, The Price of Power, Bullet for the President with Giuliano Gemma. That's one of my favorite Gemma films that he's done. I like that one even more than the Ringo films that he did. So he's done some really great ones there. I haven't seen Taste of Killing. I've heard it's pretty good. That's definitely one I want to check out sometime soon. But no, the direction there is spot on. Great widescreen shots and Vista shots and whatever. Nice close-ups and all that stuff. All the stuff you're used to in a great Italian Western. It's all there. So A+ for directing for me. Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, he's assistant director to Leone in the Fistful of Dollars. You can tell he's kind of like the student director, even though he's made 5 pretty good spaghetti westerns altogether. I mean, Taste of Killing, his early one, that's very, very basic, cheap spaghetti western, but all the other 4 that followed are definitely worth checking out. Yeah, he's kind of, there is arguments. Obviously, we'll talk about who directed what, who takes credit for the movie more so. But Leone, this is kind of his idea, and he chose Valeri to come on as the director. I mean, what I've read up on it, he's kind of like was overseeing it, the supervisor. So he, Leone was there. I won't say all the time, but I think Tonino Valeri, even if Leone wasn't there, I still think he would have made a good spaghetti western. Obviously, this one's more high budget than the other one, so I think he's done a fine job in this. Even though there are parts of this movie that are quite disjointed, where you can see which scenes were Leone, which scenes were influenced by Leone. I thought Valeri done. It was a good effort in this movie.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. I mean, that's something that stands out for me is the actual directions and scenes captured in this film.
The music.
So now the soundtrack of this film that is from someone that really needs no introduction. The three of us have really kind of banged on about him constantly, but it's Ennio Morricone, who I still regard as the absolute best. I often listen to his soundtracks in the car at home. Can't praise him enough. And the soundtracks in this, I went into this film blind when you sent it to me, Carlos, and I thought, what's going on here with music taken from other films mixed into the score? And I was like, wow, this is one of the parts I absolutely love is the soundtrack with this. Leslie, for you, the soundtrack of this and Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, Ennio Morricone, of course, fantastic. He's done some just amazing soundtracks. This one is a mixed bag for me. There are moments when I absolutely love the music, but Nobody's theme song irritates
Yeah.
the hell out of me. I cannot stand it. And I came to the realization this morning that I probably deep down subconsciously hate myself because I was rather enjoying a quiet morning, drinking my coffee and eating my breakfast. And the intro to his theme song, Nobody's theme song, started repeating itself in my brain. I'm just like, I can't stand this.
Hmm.
The Flight of the Valkyrie, I don't get the joke. I don't know if there's meant to be a joke there. I couldn't stand it. It's another track that bothered me to no ends. But for the everything else, loved it. It was really good. A lot, really noisy, a bit more abrasive compared to some of his other stuff. I felt, but it was well done. So,
Yeah.
Jeff.
I absolutely love the score, even the main theme, which did take some getting used to for me. I gotta admit, it wasn't love at first sight with the main theme for this one. My favorite track is actually the one that features the the Flight of the Valkyrie Wagner piece, Richard Wagner piece. I noticed that that's something, as a little bit of a scholar of Morricone, because I listen to as many soundtracks of his as I can. As a scholar of Morricone, I sort of notice he does that a lot, like incorporate like classic music within his scores. Obviously, in the Big Gundo, you hear a little bit of Fur Elise by Beethoven and stuff. So he tends to do that. He tends to do that quite a bit, actually. It's what I noticed, and I do like that song. That's probably my favorite track on the soundtrack. Actually, is the Wild Horde, Wild Bunch theme. Also like the track that incorporates pretty much the Man with a Harmonica bit from Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah.
The bum bum bum, when it goes into the duel and stuff at the end. Very, very Once Upon a Time in the West reminiscent for sure. I think the track is called My Fault. Actually, I think before Carlos is going to beat me to it, I do have this on CD, this particular soundtrack. It is one that I do listen to quite a bit. Yeah, I love the soundtrack. Obviously, Morricone is my favorite composer of all time, hands down, no question. So yeah, this is another winner for me. But again, the main theme itself, that was definitely, it wasn't love at first sight. It took a bit of getting used to for me. So, Carlos?
I also have the soundtrack as well because it's one that I instantly loved back in the VHS days. I kind of get what Leslie's saying, that Nobody's the main theme with the flute can get annoying, but at the same time, it's trying to make the movie a little bit more light-hearted. The Jack Beauregard theme, I kind of like that one as well. That's a good. I think for me, it's another Morricone classic soundtrack. I mean, the Wild Horde one, when you get Jack Beauregard going against the Wild Bunch, 150 of them, was fantastic. The cemetery scene, which was used in Joe Dante's The Burbs, if people can't remember. And for many years, I know a lot of American movie fans were kind of wanting to know where that sort of music came from. And it came from My Name Is Nobody. It was Nino Morricone. I think some great music in this one. I really, really do. It's one of my favourite Morricone movie soundtracks. And yeah, I mean, like Terence Hill said, in some of the features of this movie, it makes 50% of the movie. It really does.
Just to jump in for a moment there, Carlos, if I can ask, what about the scene where Nobody first meets Henry Fonda's character, where he brings in the bomb, unbeknownst to him, or he knows, but it's playing his theme song, but that scene is pretty straight. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward scene. There's no joke to it. It's really straight, and it really ruined the scene for me. I'm like, how about that scene? How does the theme?
I get
does
it.
It bother you at all?
No, I mean, I get it where some people may say that the comedy doesn't work. There are moments where it works really, really well, like the saloon scene. But again, on the spin of that, some people say that saloon scene kind of slowed it down a little bit.
But sorry to interrupt. But in that scene when he first meets Henry Fonda, there is no comedy. It's just them kind of he's just talking to him like, wouldn't you would like to go out in a blaze of glory by fighting 150 people? But his theme is being played, which kind of takes away from the seriousness.
Yeah.
In fact,
I do get. Yeah.
Jeff, Dan, what do you think?
I think the comedy in that scene is supposed to be the fact that he has that bomb, that he delivers the bomb, and he keeps throwing it back and stuff. So I guess you can maybe say it because of that, but yeah.
Sure. Okay.
This is one of the issues I had with his theme, because all the while I don't know, there's something about the theme that I kind of like it, but then I'm hating it. So it doesn't fit with some bits for me. But I'm going to throw a question to you, Leslie, because this is probably my second all-time favourite, most annoying theme. What's worse, this or Kioma, if you've seen Kioma?
I actually haven't seen Kioma, and that was going to be my question for you guys.
Okay.
Kioma is the worst, hands down.
Yeah.
Great movie, but terrible soundtrack.
Kioma is terribly bad. Jeff would notice that they did a similar sort of thing with the Maurizio Merli Western, The Man Called Blade, which wasn't as bad.
No, because it's just the guy in that one. It's just the guy that sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger singing. It's not the annoying female with the grating voice.
Yeah.
Favorite scenes.
So next up, we're going to talk about favourite scenes, which there's many favourite scenes I like, but as always, I like to leave plenty for everyone else. So I'm someone who really likes it when a homage is paid in a film, especially when Tarantino does it, but just with a little subtleties. And a particular scene in this where nobody goes to the cross and he says Sam Peckinpah. I don't know why I just love it so much. It's just them little homages. But this movie's full of very good scenes, but as well for me some very bad scenes, or just scenes that don't work for me. So I'm just going to point that one out. I'll hand it over to you, Leslie. Some of your favourite scenes.
If you are not a fan of comedy westerns, I would still recommend watching the first 9 minutes and 30 seconds of this movie because there's so much there. But of those 9 minutes and 30 seconds, I would argue it's probably the last 30 seconds where it's Henry Fonda's character shooting the other three gunmen, and the perspective of that shot is so well done. I rewound it several times just to like, how did they do this? Because it's so good. Without saying too much about what's taking place, it's such a beautiful shot. And I'm gonna leave it at that because I love that shot so much. There's a lot going on in it. But yeah, it's that shootout.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not even a shootout. It's more of a massacre of three people. But yeah.
Yeah, as for me, there's a few. I mean, obviously, when I have to pick my favorite sort of comedic scene, would be the saloon scene. There's not all too much slapstick in that particular comedy scene. Obviously, it's not like later on when he has the thing with the arms that goes around. I don't know what you call that thing, but that spinner arm thingy. That's too much slapstick for me. Obviously, when he says, I could draw my pistol 3 times before you even reach, and you see the sped up footage, that's not for me either. But in the saloon, I think the comedy is good when he shoots the glass and stuff. My favorite scene in the whole film probably would be the final showdown between the main characters, which there's a nice twist to it, obviously, but especially because it harkens back to one of my favorite shootouts, Once Upon a Time in the West, with the music. I really, really love that scene. It's a proper classic Sergio Leone style showdown in the street there. So that would be my pick. Carlos?
I've got to take the Wild Horde scene with the music, with Jack Beauregard going against the Wild Bunch. I mean, how cool was that? I mean, Henry Fonda taking out 150 men, only for his character to realise that the Wild Bunch are loaded with dynamite in their sort of luggage bags, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, there is, even though this movie is somewhat disjointed, there are some classic scenes in this movie that I agree with what Leslie says. You know, watch the first 9 minutes. You know, this is one of them westerns that you either, a lot of people are in the middle, whether they really like it or not. That opening scene kind of reminds me, it's a cross between Once Upon a Time in the West, the build up, and the High Plains Drifter, you know, the barbershop scene.
Yeah.
And also remember, you know, High Plains Drifter came out early part of 1973. So I don't know whether that might have been thrown in there and got influenced or not. The Sam Peckinpah bit, I'm going to include that in the trivia as to why his name was on one of the graves. So yeah, there's many great scenes in this movie, but for me, you know, Jack Beauregard going against the Wild Bunch was just cool and awesome to see, because they kind of tease with it, don't they? You know, obviously nobody's trying to convince him, and then when he sees them from a distance, and it's kind of funny that even though nobody's on the train, Jack Beauregard is trying to get on the train for only him to reverse back. So he's kind of insinuating, you must take on the Wild Bunch to go down in history. So that was a really cool moment in the film.
Yeah.
The Review Roundup.
Okay, so next up we got the good points and bad points, and as I've already alluded to, there are quite a few bad points to this film, but plenty of good points. I mean, for me, the good points are that it's definitely paying homage in some respects to things we've seen before. I do kind of like it, Leone's vision for this, as it was to kind of poke fun and say this is how you do it right in this film, despite it going for a comedy, which the comedy doesn't quite work for the most part in this film. So there's plenty to love about this film, as Leslie and everyone else has said. Some of the shots are fantastic and very reminiscent of like High Plains Drifter, as Carlos says. Once Upon a Time in the West, the opening scene. If you've seen Once Upon a Time in the West, that'll resonate with you straight away. But the bad points for me is this kind of almost slapsticky, Chaplin-esque comedy that I just don't like. Jeff said about the spinning hands, the sped up kind of slapping. I don't like it. And normally I would think I don't like the film, but this film has a lot going for it despite that. And there is one scene in particular that I absolutely hate that I've got to point out, and it is the urinal scene. I just hate that scene. He just stands at this bloke trying to take a slash for almost 5 minutes, this scene, and it is the most uncomfortable. And I'm thinking, I don't like it. He could have surely had that distraction some way else. It's just uncomfortable and awkward for me. But Leslie, your good points and bad points of this film.
I agree with everything that you've said. It's such a strange juxtaposition between the serious scenes versus the comedic scenes, because like the serious scenes are done really, all the scenes are done really well. Let's just put it that way. All the scenes are done really well, but the serious scenes are beautiful to look at. The performances are great, but the comedic scene, it's not comedic. I was thinking about this morning. I was like, is it really meant to be a comedy, or is it meant to be that Terrence Hill is just insane and they're just blowing this out of proportion? Because he is insane. He's obsessed with getting Henry Fonda's character popular for taking 150 people. But the comedic moments, as you said, take too long. So I was wondering if they thought it was so funny that they should focus more time on it, or that they didn't trust the audience to think that it is funny. And so they kept, Family Guy does this. Family Guy will extend scenes for 5 minutes of one action repeated to the point that it becomes funny. And it really, I felt the comedic sections really hurt the film because everything else is great. But yeah, it's such an odd film. It's at odds with itself, I feel. And again, I was questioning whether or not was actually a comedy this morning. Like, maybe it's not. Maybe it's meant to be that this guy is so insane that he's able to get away with what he's doing because he's able to slither between dimensions of reality and surreality. But yeah, it's still worth a watch, regardless of the negatives that we bring up here.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah, as to me, I mean, it's definitely a film of two halves. I mean, you have the oddball, goofball comedy bits, and obviously it's a more serious story as well. It seems almost like the film can decide whether it wants to be more serious or more comedic. I do think it was intentional because, yeah, Sergio Leone did produce this film as a sort of FU to the Trinity films that Terence Hill was very popular in, which in itself, the Trinity films were a parody of the serious spaghetti western. So it's a parody of a parody of a parody, which is odd. But I think for me the good points do outweigh the bad. The good scenes do outweigh the crappy comedic scenes, comedic scenes, I should say rather. Sorry. Again, I like the performances by the two main leads. I like the music. And yet all the serious scenes, like if they can cut out the comedy, you would pretty much have a perfect spaghetti western in your hands for good entertainment. As it is, it's still good. I definitely recommend it. For people, it's worth a watch, especially like as Dan said, if you're a fan of Once Upon a Time in the West and other Sergio Leone related films. And even if you are a fan, especially of the comedies, you will definitely dig this one. I mean, I'm not a fan of the comedies, and this is the exception to the rule for me because of the serious stuff in it. Yeah, I mean, overall, I like it. It's positive. My least favorite scene, I think I would have to agree with the one that Dan picked. That was just very, very awkward. Yeah, and with most of these slapstick scenes, it's not my style. I didn't laugh once. When you see the speed up footage when he's pulling the gun out and putting it back in, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Instead of laughing, as I think that wasn't what they intended. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's still good. I give it a 7 cowboy hat rating out of 10. Still it's a solid 7. But yeah, that's mostly because of the serious stuff in the final duel and Henry Fonda and stuff. So. Yeah.
It's a question, if I may. You're talking about it meant to be like a parody of a parody. Do you think it's also kind of like Sergio Leone making a parody of his own directing style? Because in his own movies, you get these long shots of people's faces, and they'll be spliced up with other long shots. And he kind of does the same thing here, but with the comedy moments. So I wonder if this is meant to be an experiment on his part to see if it would work, or is it just done to make fun of himself?
Maybe a little bit. I think he mostly wanted to just outdo the Trinity films because he looked at like he pretty much birthed the spaghetti western genre with Fistful of Dollars and stuff. Obviously there were westerns before, but he really the westerns changed after his films. And obviously everybody just took off, did their own thing, and then the comedies went along. So he really, I think, wanted to do a comedy, but then his way, and just show like, hey, I can do this better because I'm the granddaddy of the spaghetti western. So his style is definitely all over it. I think because I think it's a little bit of ego, like, hey, this is my thing, don't get in my way, maybe. So yeah.
I haven't seen the Trinity films. To the three of you, that if you have, do you think that he has succeeded in doing it better than them?
Well, the Trinity films were very, very popular.
But personally, do you think he did it better?
Well, personally, yeah. I can't stand the Trinity films.
Yeah, I mean, those movies are straight up slapstick, for sure. I think they only wanted the Trinity character, as much as he despised those Trinity movies. Because obviously his spaghetti westerns were kind of more serious, epic movies he wanted to do, with this big budget. And this does have the big budget. Obviously, with Sergio Leone's idea, he's overseeing the project. So basically, I think he wanted the Trinity character in a more epic western, but light-hearted. So, I mean, Terence Hill was basically playing the same character. Obviously, he's not got Bud Spencer, Bambino, his partner. I mean, those Trinity movies, as popular as they were kind of they were overdone comedy, but the fans, they really did enjoy them because, they got to a point where the spaghetti westerns, they went to the well too often with these kind of revenge spaghetti westerns, the gold hunting spaghetti westerns, the revolution ones. So the early 70s, it was now comedies were the thing. So Leone wanted Trinity, the Trinity character, Terence Hill. I agree with what Jeff said. It's kind of to maybe outdo Enzo Barboni's Trinity movies because those movies were so popular that they bypassed the dollar trilogies in box office success, and Sucker was kind of was really a flop. So the Trinity movies, they kind of made more money than that, and Leone did not. There's a new kid on the block. The new spaghetti western characters and movies will now kind of taken over. So he was kind of done and dusted really by Once Upon a Time in the West. But there is obviously another story with the Duck You Sucker into why Leone didn't really want to do that, which I'll include in the trivia. But for me, the good points and the bad points, I think the Sullivan character, they didn't really go into it a lot because it's kind of it's a gold laundering scam with the mine, because he bought the gold mine for $600, and obviously the Wild Bunch were laundering the gold through there. It was coming through there, so I didn't really go into that story that much. You didn't see Jeffrey Lewis's identity from the get-go, so they're only my slight sort of bad points. But the good points, obviously, it's a big production. You've got Terence Hill, you've got Henry Fonda, some great spaghetti western characters, classic scenes, and you've got a great soundtrack. For me, it's not in my top 10 spaghetti westerns, but for me, it's in the top 20. Dan and Leslie haven't done their cowboy hat rating, so I wanted to say 8. I really, really did, and it was pushing hard. But it's one of my kind of most watched spaghetti westerns. But I kind of just got up because it is a little bit disjointed. But like Dan says, the good points outweigh the bad points, and there's some classic scenes. I mean, even when Terence Hill shoots the midget down to size. That was pretty unique in how they did it.
I did like that, actually.
The comedy scene in the saloon, like Leslie said, did outdo the Trinity to a large extent of the movie. I thought it did because it didn't go overboard. The saloon scene, I enjoyed that. I mean, Sergio Leone's supposedly have done the saloon scenes. I thought he'd done a better job than Barboni's Trinity. They were just too silly. You had bodies being hurled over people's, in midair sort of thing. They were overdone. This one had a bit of a balance, even though two directors so-called claimed that they did this and did that. Yeah. So I mean, there is good points and there is 1 or 2 bad points, but it's a highly recommended spaghetti western for me.
I guess to give my score, then I would give it 2 scores. I'd have to give it a 5 and an 8. A 5 for the comedic stuff and the 8 for everything else, because everything else is so good. But yeah, the comedic sections are a 5 for me. Sorry, Dan.
Mm-hmm. For me, this was a film that I found fascinating on first watch and even second watch. So I wanted to delve into a bit more of the kind of idea behind directing it and Sergio Leone attaching his name. So I did kind of not so much study. I'd done a bit of reading as to Leone's intention before coming up with kind of my score. And he see Once Upon a Time in the West as kind of the end of spaghetti western. He started with the dollars, and then he's finished it with almost coming into the modern West. And just reading kind of his vision for this, I found quite fascinating on how he wanted to almost mock certain things and show this is how it should be done. And reading all this gave me a real understanding of what it was going for. And despite the comedy that I don't like, and I don't see that it always works as a parody, it's still the really good points outweigh that. So I'm still going to give this a 7 cowboy hats. If the comedy was just not even sped up, it could have been pushed up to an 8, but I just think that sped up comedy is just really quite pathetic. I think it just does nothing for me. I mean, even when you've got sort of a certain scene with the cowboys all running in it, that's even sped up. And it just reminds me of like a Chaplin kind of Chaplin-esque film, which I'm not a fan of either. I don't get that comedy. Mind you, it's not as bad as. I'd rather watch it over Blazing Saddles, let's say, a film of 90 minutes of that comedy.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
But it doesn't let the film down. And what I say is that to summarise it, it's a 7 out of 10. And I would say there's something in this for everyone. You're going to love it when it's paying homage. You're going to love the soundtrack, apart from maybe the Nobody theme. Something for everyone. It's a very odd mixed bag, likeable mixed bag for me. So with that being said, we're going to move on to some trivia. So Leslie, do you have any trivia or anything you'd like to add?
I actually don't. Apologies.
Okay. Yeah, I think Carlos, you can discuss mostly about Sergio Leone, but yeah, obviously he's attached in this film, and yeah, there is various accounts of what he contributed, directed, etc. People say he directed the opening scene and the barber scene with Henry Fonda. There's accounts that he directed pretty much all the Henry Fonda scenes, and Tonino Valeri was the other scenes beyond Fonda. So I don't know what is true or not. I think Carlos might be more in the loop on this subject than me. So Carlos?
Yeah, first off, the idea is based on Sergio Leone, and he's wanted Tony Valeri to direct this movie and to oversee it. There are claims that Leone done the saloon scene, the urinal scene, and he was there on hand to the jewel scene and the Wild Bunch scene. I mean, I've seen photos of him on the train track. Where it's divided is because 80% of this movie was shot in New Mexico in the States, and a lot of that Leone was not there. The scenes in Spain, I'm hearing that he was there, but Leone took 5 days to go to New Orleans to film some scenes while Tony Valeri was ill. So Leone went there with his team, and obviously Valeri had his team. So that's where it kind of does look disjointed. Now, the movie was a bit of a box office flop in the States. People are saying if it would have been a hit, maybe Leone would have added more claim to it. But with it not being that much of a success, he kind of wanted his name not included in the movie. But that's where the argument is, who done what. I mean, it's quite evident the opening scene that Leone's is overseeing that. Probably Tonino Valeri's directing it in the Leone style. But as the director, I would say Tonino Valeri's got his name on it. It's just that he's in the background, Leone, and he's directed a couple of scenes. A bit of trivia into why Sam Peckinpah's name is on the grave, which I always get a kick out of that. Now, Leone did not want to direct Duck You Sucker. He actually wanted Sam Peckinpah to direct the movie because he kind of washed his hands with making spaghetti westerns in Once Upon a Time in the West, because that was the perfect finale. So cheekily, you could say, he wanted Sam Peckinpah to direct Duck You Sucker, which Sam Peckinpah kind of felt slighted that a name, Sergio Leone, not being as big a director in the States, that an Italian director would want him to direct his movie. Obviously, he turned him down. Yeah, obviously he turned him down, which was not. Leone took offence to that, so that's why his name is actually on the grave. And obviously, he's taken a pot shot at Jack Beauregard taking out the Wild Bunch, which was a Sam Peckinpah movie.
Yeah.
So there are the connections of Sam Peckinpah and Sergio Leone. And also, you've got to remember High Plains Drifter. Eastwood also had Sergio Leone and Don Siegel on the graveyard.
The grave zones, yeah.
Obviously, this movie was released. High Plains Drifter was released before, but like I say, who stole what idea? It's they both came out.
Films very quick, so maybe High Plains.
Yeah, they both came out in '73, released. So
yeah.
I always get a chuckle out of that when Terence Hill reads his name out, Sam Peckinpah on the grave.
Sam Peckinpah.
Yeah. Because I always tell people, do try to take note with the cemetery scene with his name, because that was. I don't think it was a paying homage. I think it's taken a pot shot. And what better way to do it than put it on screen?
Yeah. Do you know how well the movie did in Europe?
It done well in Germany, France, and Italy. I think it was third highest gross movie in Italy. It done well.
Okay, yeah.
But Leone wanted a big movie in the States. He was really craving that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, with it not doing so well in America, he kind of wanted his name not off the project a little bit.
If I can ask a question again, when it comes to comedic westerns only, how high would you rank this?
Spaghetti or in general also American comedy westerns?
Let's go both.
I have this quite high up. I mean,
I know Dan's not. Yeah.
No, I think if you're talking both American and spaghetti, I tend to avoid a lot of the spaghetti comedy westerns after seeing a handful or so. But I mean, the American ones, talk about an episode we got coming out, which I think is a lot funnier, a lot more fun. I think something like Three Amigos is far, far funnier than this. Yeah, no, it's not horrendously funny, but I like you, Leslie. I don't go into it as a comedy now. It doesn't work on any level as a comedy. I just reiterate it, but it is a western that's got something for everyone, I guess.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, as for me, as a rule of thumb, general, I don't like comedy in my westerns, period, whether it is spaghetti or American. It can work when done really well. Like, yeah, we do have an episode coming out, I think just before this one actually airs on YouTube. That is a much better example of an American western with comedy elements in it than something, for example, like Blazing Saddles for me personally, and I think also for Dan as well. Carlos liked the best of us three. But the spaghetti westerns, definitely this one is the best when it comes to the spaghetti western that have comedies in it. Not a fan of the Trinities, not a fan of any of the other films that he did with Bud Spencer, where they are slapsticky comedy. This is definitely the standout of the Italian western comedies for me.
Like everybody else, I mean, I prefer my westerns serious, but I take in that, to spice things up, you've got to have something a bit different. in westerns. You can't just have the same revenge story, war story, and they try to do something a bit different. I mean, there are American Western comedies that I do like, Maverick, Cat Ballou, without going OTT, which the Trinity movies are for me. If I could say another spaghetti Western that does it well is Michael Lupo's Ben and Charlie with
Actually, did not mind that one. Yeah.
Giuliano Gemma and George Eastman, because that has it's divided. That is basically a movie done in two halves, because you got one part is kind of light-hearted and one part serious. But this movie, My Name's Nobody, is kind of mixed. You could sort of see where Tonino Valeri done those scenes and Sergio Leone done those scenes, and the music gets mixed. You've got some bits comedic and you've got some serious music. But yeah, I mean, I think this one's up there for me. Like I said, I don't really do spaghetti Western comedies, but this one's probably it's my favorite. It's my personal favorite one. But there are some good ones out there. Ben and Charlie, A Train to Durango is another good one with Antonio Stefan. They're the best examples.
I'm just surprised no one mentioned the Ballad of Cable Hogue. It's my favorite. Yeah. Going South, but I guess I've been stood corrected by Dan. Like, I don't really consider this so much a comedy. It's just a serious movie, which unfortunately has some awful comedic moments. So
I mean, I call it light-hearted. It's more light-hearted. I mean, when you get to see the Trinity movie, Leslie, you will be like, oh my God, they've gone really over the top here. It's some scenes are a bit like Benny Hill, But,
I was wondering if I would have appreciated the comedic moments in this movie more so if I had seen Trinity movies prior to.
Yeah, I mean, give him a shot.
Maybe.
Okay, so now we're on to the releases of this film in physical form, as we always try to promote that. I do have the German release that Carlos was kind enough to gift me. What I will point out for those of you not physical media enthusiasts, it is the way to go. There are numerous full feature-length streams on YouTube of it, but you'll know this, you'll get the entirety, nothing cut, and some really good features as well that I had. Leslie, what copy do you have?
Exactly the same from our pal Carlos. Thank you, Carlos. I do appreciate it. Yeah.
And I got the German release as well, but not the Blu-ray. I got the DVD. I do have to upgrade this to Blu-ray.
Oh, okay.
DVD, but it's pretty much the same variant as the Blu-ray, just not the HD print.
I tend to watch the American version because the picture is quite good, but the German ones that I sent to Dan and Jeff, you got the special features. Sergio Leone's involvement. I did get this twin pack, which has
Genius, Two Partners and a Dupe as well.
You got the two
which
movies
the Germans have as the second Nobody film.
Yeah, they try to put it as Nobody's the Greatest, and it's
in
not.
Germany.
This is actually sold out, but it does have the features in great depth, saying about Sergio Leone's involvement. It's now out of print, that one. I mean, it's available also in Italy and France, but you would have thought somebody would have put a special edition out because it's only available in the UK on DVD. So I'm pretty sure one day I think that would make it as a good sort of special edition. I mean, even though the American ones has got it as a 40th anniversary edition, it's not really anything special. It's just the movie itself. So maybe Arrow Video could put it on the map, or Eureka.
Well,
they seem
hopefully
they seem to dip their toes into Sergio Leone related films now. So hopefully.
Hopefully it'll follow Once Upon a Time in the West, a nice Arrow release.
Yes.
than this. We got a nice one of Duck You Sucker, didn't we, from Eureka? So now that concludes this review. I'd like to thank Leslie from formerly known as The Good, the Bad, and the OK for joining us, and I'm going to pass this over to Jeff for the next movie, which is his pick. What we're going to be talking about next, Jeff?
Yes. So next episode 16. I've got one of my favorite underrated westerns with one of my favorite actors. The actor at my channel is named after. A Charles Bronson 1972 Euro Western directed by Michael Winner, also co-starring the great Jack Palance. We've also discussed him on the podcast in the Professionals episode and The Mercenary. So it's going to be our third one with Jack Palance, but it is 1972's Shadow's Land, which, man, this is such an underrated one. I can't wait to discuss this one with the two of you. So that's coming up in episode 16.
So that being said, that wraps up this episode 15 of the Westerns for Life podcast. Once again, thank you, Leslie, for joining us. Especially pick this one for you. I'm sure we could have spoke a lot more on this. There's plenty to dissect and understand about this one.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Pleasure.
It's been our pleasure. Yeah.
We just wished your channel was still up, was still going with the Western reviews.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Okay, Jeff.
That having been said, Westerns.
You get your pistol out?
For life. Adios, amigos.
Westerns for life.
Awesome.
Like this.
How'd he do it, Pa? I only heard one shot.
How come you know so much about me? Everyone knows about Jack Beauregard.
16 days ain't very long, even for someone like you. If you go away, who's gonna be left? Nobody.
Maybe so, but a man's got to quit sometime.
Someone like you gotta go out with style.
But if I don't kill Beauregard first, he'll kill me. You know where he is?
Must be down below. The secret of a long life is to try not to shorten it. Know the rules? Gotta hit the glass before it hits the floor. Fellas like you never seem to catch on. It's just a matter of time before someone's gonna shoot holes in yours. It's always the best to the first to go.
Which means you ain't going nowhere. Staying here with your Indian friends for good.
Since I was a boy, I always dreamed of you like that. An immense open plain. 150 purebred sons of bitches on horseback. You facing them alone. The next one might hit a couple of inches lower.
Who are you, anyway?
Me? Nobody.